Today we are discussing whether or not Warzone is dead, because this is something I'm seeing people spam in my comment section on Twitter and all kinds of other stuff, in addition to a few other streamers jumping ship and playing maybe Apex, Splitgate, a few other games. We're going to talk about all that, what's going on with Warzone, where it's going to be headed, and if the game is dead. And if you enjoy the video, learn something new, please do me a favor, hit the like button. If you're brand new, want to find your way back, just double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. So the first question, we'll go to answer that right off the bat. Is Warzone dead? No, it's not even close to dead. Unfortunately, I wish it was getting very close to being dead, because then, there'd be a little bit more urgency from Activision. Because obviously one of the biggest concerns right now is people's concern over the cheater problem. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around the cheater problem. People don't think that there is an anti-cheat in place. There is actually an anti-cheat in place. There's actually two different methods, at least to my knowledge, where they do have some kind of weak, terrible, easy to work around anti-cheat. Which we're going to touch on that. Then there's the soft anti-cheat, which relies heavily on reporting. Obviously, if somebody gets reported a bunch of times, then they end up in a shadow ban system, which requires a manual review. Obviously, those take a while. So most time when people get shadow banned, they are shadow banned for approximately 1 week. The problem with that is there's false positives where people will get reported just because they're incredibly good. Especially if you play on a super high sensitivity, you're more likely to get reported, especially on keyboard and mouse. People have been doing it for decades, and they'll get reported just because it looks crazy, but they tend to miss a lot of shots too. Just people don't realize that. And then you have the anti-cheat, which is obviously trying to do stuff to catch cheaters, especially the most blatant ones. And there's definitely some kind of anti-cheat in place, because if there wasn't, then people would just be able to rage hack all day and they would never get banned. They wouldn't need 72 accounts. It's not just happening by reports alone. So there's that. And then people are like, well, they just need an IP ban. They need a hardware ban. They do that stuff, but unfortunately, there are anti-cheats, if that makes sense. So basically, all these cheating companies that are out there, they go out of their way to protect their consumers. So if somebody wants to be able to cheat, what they're going to do is put in something, and then they go, okay, well, if you get detected, they're going to IP ban you. Okay, so we're going to put in an IP spoofer so that it doesn't know where you're at. All right, cool. They'll hardware ban you. All right, well, we're going to have a hardware spoofer or something along those lines. So obviously, there are people going out of their way to make cheats. And since Warzone is like stupid popular, they make a lot of money from Warzone versus other games, because other games aren't as popular. Why would you make cheats for a game that isn't as popular? Like, invest all that time and energy for it to not even be a popular game. So you're going to do it for the most popular game, which unfortunately in this case ends up being Warzone. There are things that they can do to ramp this up and get a little bit better and be a little bit more proactive and stricter. So hopefully we see some of that type of stuff. But the cheater problem has kind of come to this point where people are just tired of playing, 20 minutes to only die to a cheater, or because there's so many cheaters, you're suspecting people are cheating immediately, So it's kind of one of those things. So obviously that's the first bubble. We'll talk a little bit more about anti-cheat towards the end when we have like hopes for what Warzone's direction. But you're gonna have kind of an idea. So what's funny is I actually play a lot with randoms, especially when it comes to Rebirth. I queue up with randoms. Sometimes people recognize my name, sometimes people don't. Once I start talking, whatever, not that big a deal. But there's a lot of times where people have no clue who the hell I am, which is good, right? Like, I don't want randoms always to know who I am, because then they play different. But I'll get into these lobbies and I'll just be talking to them. Hey, what do you think of the game? Most of the time, they don't even mention cheaters. They don't even talk about cheaters. They don't even say anything about cheaters. I was like, oh, it's kind of just boring. That's their main go-to, boring, because there's a content drought. There's a huge content drought when it comes to Warzone. They did this map reskin. They gave us Rebirth about 8 months ago, and people are getting a little bit burnt out because it's literally the same thing over and over. And at least with Fortnite, they change their map every individual season. Ours, mostly lackluster. We got train, another subway train, satellites crashing to the ground, and a few other things here, but mostly it's just a facelift, cosmetic 80s theme, which doesn't really do it for people. And Rebirth, they turned it from night to day and added one building in the middle of the map that used to be like a broken up building, right? So they have done stuff, but it's just not enough. When it comes to weapons, they did a huge weapon tuning, which was huge, especially good for the channel. We could talk about, new metas and balancing and all that stuff. That's all good, but you need to have content, and not just paid content. Because I can go to the store right now and there's plenty of items in there that shoot tracer bullets and do all these cool cosmetic things. I don't buy anything from the store, so that doesn't help me. That's why at least back in the day, you can grind supply drops a little bit and then you feel like, all right, cool, I got something every single day you jumped on, versus now it's like, all right, cool, I got to fork over $20, but want anything new? Or I got to wait until the new season starts, which unfortunately, that's sometimes a long way away, and you get a little bit bored since there's not enough in-game events. And when they do drop the in-game events, they don't work. Like we had the Blueprint Blitz. It was in there for like a day, and they're like, you know what? We realize it's not actually working. Oh, boom, we put in the CX9. You're not able to level it or unlock it. And you got the engine-owning company trolling them on Twitter saying, hey, you use our cheat, you can unlock it and use all the attachments. So pretty bad stuff there. So obviously that's all. I think the problem is a huge problem, but the majority of the player base, which because of skill-based matchmaking, doesn't generally run into as many. But what people will talk about is the mass exodus of players. There's still a lot of players that are top streamers still playing Warzone. Obviously not like big people like Nick Merckx and Tim the Tatman, but unfortunately they don't carry the weight of the entire community on their shoulders, right? There's a lot of other communities that really passionate about Warzone. There's still people that are playing Modern Warfare. There's still people that play Cold War, League play, all that type of stuff. Not as many people as Warzone. Warzone still has the lion's share because it is a free-to-play game. I'm going to mention that because that's pretty important. And a lot of people are saying, well, it has all this competition. Everyone's going to leave when Battlefield drops or when Halo Infinite drops. And we're going to go through those things right now. So obviously there's streamer exodus, but it's kind of the burnout part because of the content. When Season 5 drops, we're going to see how many of those streamers are a little bit bored of Apex and they're going to jump over. They gave it 2 weeks and they're like, yep, I'm back on it. Because that is kind of the trend with gaming. We've seen this in World War II. We've seen this in BO4. When other things come out, people take off for a bit. Sometimes they stay, but inevitably they come back. And COD is one of those things that people say it's dead every single year. And no matter what, it just doesn't end up dying. And it's still the most popular, most sold game, blah, 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 blah. You hear it every year. And that doesn't happen by accident. There are a lot of people playing this game and spending money, and Activision is raking in the money, even though they got all that drama with the workplace nonsense and all kinds of other drama we're not going to talk about in this video. But people choose to kind of feel in because they get bored. They get a little bit what's called burnout, and that's content creators and then other people that play this game 2 hours a week. Sometimes you get bored. It just depends on what what's in the game. Is it keeping you driving? This payload mode doesn't interest me at all. So I don't play it. I don't care about it. Most of their LTMs are kind of trash. The Halloween one was kind of cool, but they got to think outside the box. Maybe talk to content creators. I don't know. Talk to somebody, because whoever's creating their ideas for limited time modes, not really the best at it. So we've seen people go to different games. Splitgate, I personally think it's a flavor of the month until Halo drops or Battlefield drops, because once Halo drops, the people that really have been craving a Halo game are just going to jump from Splitgate over. The only people that aren't is probably PlayStation people, because PlayStation people cannot play Halo. Most people can't get next-gen consoles, so you're going to be locked into playing on PC. If your options are between Splitgate and Halo Infinite, one's free and one's paid, that's really what it's going to come down to. But the multiplayer for Halo is free, and that's what they're competing against, 6v6, not a battle royale. That's the problem with this Halo and Splitgate stuff. Obviously, it's taking a few people that would otherwise be playing Cold War, but Cold War is, most people aren't liking that game, so they're not playing it. But Battle Royale is a completely different niche of audience, right? And then you have X Defiant, which is supposed to come out. Everything I've seen of it doesn't look good to me. I think it looks ugly. The aim assist looks broken. It just doesn't look it looks like they tried to copy COD, but didn't even take the best parts of it. But I guess maybe I got to get a little bit of playtime on that one, a little bit besides the gameplay I've seen. Then later this year, we have World War II Vanguard, which is going to drop. It's going to be a multiplayer experience. Obviously, well, hopefully I get to play it early and then get a little bit of thoughts behind it, and then we'll see kind of how the game develops. And hopefully it's a solid 6v6 core respawn multiplayer for both core as well as hardcore, and then have the S&D in the mix where it's going to be good, because that is a critical point for the game. And then later on, obviously they'll integrate that into Warzone, and that's going to be a ton of content. And then we have to have a new map at that point, right? Like, we're going to have it. And I like the Apex thing. A lot of people talk about how many maps they have. Obviously, Apex isn't at the scale of Warzone. You have 150 players versus 60. So you're able to make a lot smaller maps. It's like multiplayer. Of course, you can have 12, 20 maps versus one big old map. It's a totally different beast, but it is what it is, right? So what does that mean? Like, are people all going to be jumping on these other games? Not unless they have battle royales. Because what I've seen from the long time is people who generally like battle royales. So they're going to wait. And if a Battlefield's non-BR, BR, whatever the hell it's called, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, is not BR enough, people are not going to play it. Obviously, the Battlefield fans are going to love it because they always love Battlefield, right? Except for maybe Battlefield 5 wasn't so popular. But they generally like Battlefield. And then COD people generally like COD. So if it doesn't feel enough like COD, and if, you know, the COD people aren't going to like it. And if it feels too much like COD, then the Battlefield people aren't going to like it. So it's kind of hard to satisfy both of those communities, because usually COD, Battlefield are always kind of going head to head. COD usually wins just by popularity, but overall they compete. Battlefield always had the best graphics, and, you know, it's kind of one of those things. And then Halo Infinite is supposed to have a battle royale. We're thinking that's going to be first quarter. So COD has until the end of the year to get Warzone together and draw people in and solve a bunch of the issues, because in reality, the only BR that's going to be coming out is going to be Battlefield, BR, non-BR, or maybe a secret BR that they're working on that they're not going to tell us because they're denying it the same way they did for Warzone until it actually dropped. And then you have Halo Infinite, which their sound lines for Battle Royale, I don't know if that was made up or some leaker, you know, made that up and did some voiceover where it sounded like it. But if that drops, that could be huge, especially if it's free to play. But again, you're leaving out Sony, PlayStation, right? So you got to have PC or you got to have an Xbox. So it's still kind of hard there. There's not really a lot of competition. And that's why Warzone has been able to go on so long, because even despite all its flaws, it is the only like action-packed, solid battle royale with something for everyone. Whether you like Verdansk or Rebirth because of the different pacing, maybe you just like going into Plunder. I've looked up people's stats and they only play in Plunder. That's it. That's like their mode. They love Plunder and they play it. They do mini games for themselves. They do these LTMs. They get really hardcore into that. And there's an audience there. Not for me. I go in and test stuff, but that's a whole different, different thing there. So what does Warzone, like a perfect world, Warzone does a few different things. One, we get an improved anti-cheat because we already have one. We just need it to actually be like super effective. But keep in mind, the hackers are trying to make money. The people, the cheat makers are trying to make a lot of money. And the best way to do that is to counter the anti-cheat. And I know that makes common sense, but they got to counter the anti-cheat. So it makes it really hard for the anti-cheat developer to solve the problem when it's like, you make bigger bullets and then you got bigger armor, bigger bullets, bigger armor, and now armor piercing. It's like, it's a battle, it's kind of like one of those things. FoV options. So why I say FoV options, because if they're in their head, they're trying to go for 120, don't do that. Like, if that's what's holding it back, get it to at least 100. You know how many like PC players play on 100 to 105 to 110? Most don't even go over 107 because it gets rid of all your aim assist, even though that's been disproven multiple times. People play on 120 and you definitely get a lot of aim assist. So like maybe even settle for 100 and then maybe later on bump it to 110, or just go right to 110 and then bump it to 120 later on, or just come out and say, hey, you know what? Based off this, the only way PlayStation's going to be able to do it, or Xbox old gen is going to be able to do it, we got to put it to 100, and then next gen, maybe they go to 110 or 120. And then you at least have there to kind of bridge that gap between 80 up to 120, somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe optimize frames. It seems every season the frames tend to drop because they do something in their systems that just make it less optimized. So maybe they got to figure that part out. And last but not least, they need a new map or heavily revolving POIs. The biggest POI change that they did recently, which was huge, was the Nakatomi Tower for that Die Hard event. That thing was crazy popular. It actually changed how the map was fundamentally played, whereas the hotspot was like super, a boneyard, and a few other locations. This made this the dynamic hotspot, and they really didn't evolve it from there. The train was never like a hotspot. Any of these other POIs were never hotspots beyond the day. Shipwreck, kind of a terrible spot if the zone doesn't go over there. It's like this was right in the middle of the map, and they allowed it to be very important. You get 100K cash, you get specialist bonus, maybe not make it that overpowered, but by having those dynamic areas on the map, maybe even change it from, every couple hours. Like Apex, they swap out and rotate the maps every hour and a half or something crazy like that. I guess it depends on the season and the mode you're playing, but either way, they need to be able to have a little bit creativeness where when you land, it's not like the map is the exact same and there's really no point in going anywhere unless I just have a favorite hotspot. So I think those are the things they got to work on. And then obviously the integration, hopefully that's a little bit smoother this time around, because it was very busted when they brought the Cold War stuff over. I mean, obviously it helped the channel because we were able to do a lot of testing, but besides that, it was atrocious. So let me know if you think I left anything off. Obviously, the content's still going to keep coming. I still enjoy Warzone a lot. When I play Rebirth, I only run into a hacker maybe once every other day. But then again, I'm not playing 10 hours a day, so it is a little bit different. So we'll see. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. It was a little bit different, more of like just kind of talking through my thoughts. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't think Warzone's even close to dead. I wish it was closer so they could be more urgent on those last things I mentioned about coming out. But season 5, there's a lot of rumored stuff, so it's going to be interesting. I think next week we're going to see a lot of those content creators jumping back on Warzone. And we'll see kind of what happens. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, learned something new. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button if you're brand new and want to find your way back. Double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.